It is time now for Back Pages tonight here on Sky Sports News, bringing you a first look at the sports stories in the morning's newspapers. And joining us are Charlie White, football journalist at The Sun, and the athletics football correspondent David Ornstein. Hi guys, great to have you with us. We'll talk to you in just a moment. First of all, let's run through those back pages. And we start with The Guardian. She's ready to perform is the headline there, as Serena Wiegmann backs Jess Carter for their crucial semi-final against Italy, that after her racism ordeal. The Telegraph also carries an image of Jess Carter on the front of its sports section, and they also focus on a High Court ruling that a huge expansion at Wimbledon can go ahead. Plenty of transfer news too. What about this on the back of the Mirror? Liverpool muscling in on Spurs' bid for Palace's England centre-back Mark Gahey. Other transfer news as well, of course, with Liverpool taking their transfer spending to almost £300 million after agreeing a £79 million deal for Ugo Ekitike. Plenty of transfer stories to get to, but first of all, let's focus on the Lionesses with our guest. Of course, they've got that big chance to get to the final of the Euros. Plenty of focus, gentlemen, on Jess Carter, understandably, in the build-up to this semi-final against Italy. Charlie, just want to come to you first of all. This is a story covered in The Guardian, other papers as well. The headline there, Wiegmann backs Carter for Italy semi-final after racism ordeal. Charlie, it's important to say, first of all, isn't it, that the resilience Jess Carter has shown to come back from this ordeal, being racially abused online, and be desperate to help her country and want to play in this big semi-final. She deserves credit for that.
It tells you everything about the player, what type of person she is. Obviously incredibly brave to deal with more rubbish. I mean, it's obviously a sad story, isn't it? That even now, 4 years ago at the Euros, and you consider at Wembley, the men's team, the shocking abuse that some of the England players received, racist abuse, and it's still continuing, isn't it? And she's been, as I said, really brave, fronted it up, and let's hope she can sort of stick two fingers up at these sort of idiots on social media and put in a brilliant performance to get into the final.
David, this is also a story the Telegraph concentrate on, and their main picture has a smiling Jess Carter on the front of it. Headline, Lionesses ready to defy racist trolls. It's important to say, though, players building up to any game and people in any sport should not have to face what Jess Carter is going through.
Yeah, it's not only online, Mark. I was reading a story in the Telegraph before coming on air about the England rugby players in Argentina receiving racist abuse while warming up in the in-goal area before their test match over there. But this is a really sobering story, yet again involving Jess Carter, just the latest in an absolute catalogue of abhorrent abuse. On the one hand, you don't want attention drawn to these idiots. On the other, it's the choice of those who have suffered from the prejudice, in this case, Jess Carter, to do whatever they like. And she released a really dignified statement about stepping back from social media. She was supported by the Football Association and her teammates. They're not going to be taking the knee tomorrow night, which is a really interesting development, and they're united on that. They're being backed by the Italian team, who they'll be going up against as well. They say they'll be standing upright, and let's see if anything else comes of it in terms of gestures. I think talks are ongoing as we speak, and we've spoken so many times on this programme and written and discussed it in such depth over a number of years now, but it doesn't seem to be getting any better. And that's the point Serena Wiegmann was making in terms of them not taking the knee. Georgia Stanway as well, that it's not having any impact in their view. The campaign body FAIR sort of question that, because they want as many people and as many gestures to highlight this problem as possible, and for people to unite. And Jess Carter didn't have the best game and maybe hasn't had the best tournament. She's not alone in that. There have been other players as well, but for her to be ready and available for selection, which may well happen if Sarina Wiegman tries to go with her. By the way, she's played in 3 different positions across the back line in the tournament so far. And all credit to her, all power to her. And I think we in the media and public need to get behind her too and play whatever small part we can in trying to eradicate this absolute disgraceful behaviour.
You mentioned this very interesting debate there, David, around taking the knee, which the Lionesses have said they won't now do in this semi-final ahead of the game because they think, well, look, it's not having an impact here. We're taking the knee before games. Nothing is changing. As David touched on, FAIR, the anti-discrimination body, has questioned that, saying, look, powerful actions are needed now. Charlie, it's a really delicate debate, this one, isn't it?
It is, and you have to respect the England players and all of those involved. And the decision they make is the right one because it's their decision, it's their choice. So I absolutely agree with the decision to stand and not take the knee. And just going back to a point that David made, I totally agree. These are high profile issues, but it's in all sports and it's right down the football pyramid. I mean, it was 9-10 days ago, Salford had a friendly at York. And the Salford players came off the pitch with 7 minutes to go because of a fan making racist gestures and noises towards one of the players. So the game didn't finish. And maybe that game hasn't received sort of widespread focus, but it just shows you it's still everywhere. It happens in non-league football. It happens at youth level. It's not just at this, at the really sort of major tournaments or in the Premier League. The abuse, some players receive on social media again. But I'm talking League 2 players, League 1 players. It's still happening everywhere. It's just as bad. Unfortunately, we all know parts of social media are a cesspit, and I'm not sure those people who are writing this rubbish are actually taking any notice of whether players are kneeling or standing. But needless to say, you've still got to make an effort. And again, I do support the England players and what they've decided to do.
Let's focus on the game itself now and the times. They have a picture on the front of their back page. Lucy Bronze there showing her passion and determination ahead of this big semi-final. David, in terms of the fitness boost that England have ahead of this semi-final, just how significant is it that Sarina Wiegman has said Captain Leah Williamson is looking like she's going to be fit to play?
Yeah, wasn't she on crutches in a boot on Thursday? That was extremely worrying. An absolutely totemic player for club and country. And she's been back in training. So the words coming from Sarina Wiegman are extremely positive on that front. And I'm sure Williamson will be leading by example again. So will the aforementioned Lucy Bronze, because she's just an absolute Goliath. Her goal in the quarterfinal, but the way she plays, her penalty too, of course, and her attitude, her experience, she's an absolute top-level performer. And England have a number of them because they've gone far in the last 3 major tournaments now to the final. So they're a bit of an expert when it comes to the business end of the competition. I think Beth Mead was talking about that in the build-up to this match, is kind of like this is where England tend to turn it on. It's been a rocky road so far with the France defeat and Sweden coming from 2 goals behind. I don't think anyone's done that to progress at this stage of the competition. They now come into this as favourites against an Italy side they've got a better record against, and Italy haven't been at this stage since I think 1997. So yeah, it's all on England. They've got the sort of weapons to do it, but they haven't quite hit their stride like they would like in this tournament so far. And so they've got to step up defensively. They've been a little bit weak. They've been caught on the transition to pace as well, Sweden and France. And you could say this Italian team don't play too dissimilarly to Sweden. And so they're going to really need to be on their guard against the sort of perceived underdog. It should be a brilliant match. And England know they're so close to yet another final, which just sums up this sort of glorious era under Sarina Wiegman, who is the expert, the master of this competition as well.
Yeah, a number of other papers looking at this story, looking ahead to the big game, the Mirror included. in that. We'll touch on the transfer news a bit later. Picture of Mark Gahey on the back page there. Penalties, no miss is the headline there. Just briefly on the game, Charlie, huge opportunity, isn't it, for England? Because, yes, they're up against Italy. They shouldn't be underestimated. But when you bear in mind they've been out in the group stage of the last 2 Euros, massive chance for England to reach the final, isn't it, Charlie?
It's a great opportunity. They obviously have to play better than they did last week. Not surprised they've been practicing penalties today and yesterday. I think we'd all be expecting that because they obviously weren't great. Obviously, really good news that Lucy Bronze and Lauren James are fit because they were both limping off the pitch as well. So they were also two concerns. But it's so important, obviously, to have their experience in this game. And that's why I'm absolutely certain England are going to go through.
Let's talk transfers now. Really interesting stories on the back page of the Mirror and indeed the Express as well. Picture of Mark Gahey on the back. Liverpool and Tottenham potentially tussling for the signing of Mark Gahey. David, what do you make of this story?
Well, he's one of the best defenders for Crystal Palace and England, of course. I'd be expecting him to start at the World Cup next summer. He's into now the last 12 months of his contract at Palace. Palace decided not to take Newcastle's offer last summer. I think it was about 65 plus £5 million in the end. So this was always a risk when they made that decision. It seems, well, we know Liverpool are keen on him at the right price. Reports today suggesting Tottenham, who have made a bid for him in January, don't forget, are still in the mix too. I think Palace would be looking to cash in rather than face losing him for free next summer. But he's got the power in his hands. He's very happy at Crystal Palace by the sounds of it. And I don't think he'd be afraid to go to the end of his deal. It doesn't seem like a new contract is on the agenda. And I think Mark Gahey, with total respect to Crystal Palace, is going to be playing at the very top in Champions League football, whether it's sooner or later. And so, yeah, you suspect this is going to be one of the stories of the upcoming weeks of the transfer window. Whether he leaves or not, I really don't know, but there's interest in him, and rightly so.
David touched on whether this is the right time for Palace to cash in on Mark Gahey. Charlie, where do you stand on that? And if it is the right time, do you suspect it could be Liverpool or Tottenham in terms of his destination?
Well, I think Palace privately know that they're probably going to lose him. Obviously, there's a lot of interest in Ebereeze as well. I don't think they'd both be allowed to leave. And that would be a disaster, of course. You know, it's not been a great few weeks for Crystal Palace anyway, has it, when you look at what's happened in Europe? Certainly they're going to have more games, although, you know, in the Conference League. But yeah, I think Gahey, as David said, he's a terrific player. There's a lot more to come from him. Yeah, my gut feeling is that he'll be starting the season, or certainly in September. By September, be playing for another club.
Charlie, David, thanks very much indeed for now. Back with you shortly. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, we'll look at more of the stories in the morning's back pages, including this in The Sun as Bryan Mbeumo finally signs on at Manchester United. And is Nicholas Jackson a possible new teammate for him at Old Trafford? David, want to come to you next and talk about your publication, The Athletic, and this proposed deal for Ugo Ekitike going to Liverpool. Why do you think this is the striker that they want?
Well, they needed an extra addition up front. That was what they were looking for to strengthen their attack. And there is an expectation, there certainly has been, that Darwin Núñez could be on his way out of the club. As we know, they made an approach for Alexander Isak and expressed an interest in paying around £120 million, it's understood, for him. But there's no sign of Newcastle's resistance breaking. They have always fully intended to keep him. And as far as we know, that will be the case. We don't have any information to the contrary so far. And therefore, Liverpool have clearly looked at other options. Ekitike was always very high among them. And they've managed to go through with this deal now that's worth, in total, if all the add-ons are realised, around 91 million euros. But, I think they'll be happy with the initial fee of what, is it 79 million pounds or something, and then 10 million in add-ons. So yeah, Liverpool will be delighted with that. He's one of the most promising up and coming attackers in European world football. He's shown plenty of glimpses of that at Eintracht Frankfurt. It was a bit of a difficult spell at PSG before that, but at Reims prior, we all saw his potential. Newcastle tried to sign him 2 or 3 times, and pretty much everybody at the top level has been linked with him. Manchester United made a push for him last week, but he had already committed to Liverpool. And it'd be really interesting to see how he fits into their system, just 23 years old. And a slightly different style to what they've got now, and maybe it symbolises a change in approach from Arne Slot, or the ability to have one with a bit more direct football, and that shows in some of their other signings like Frimpong and Kirkez as well. So yeah, it's a really interesting one, and it's pretty much there now, agreement club to club, and he'll travel, have his medical tomorrow, and then join Liverpool on their Asia tour. So fascinating addition that takes Liverpool spending into the hundreds of millions of pounds.
Yeah, it's been a big summer for Liverpool. When we look at Ugo Ekitike, Charlie, he helped his team Eintracht Frankfurt to a 3rd place finish in the Bundesliga last season. Very influential on the pitch for them. Do you think he's someone who can hit the ground running for Liverpool at the age of 23?
Look, I think he is a raw, obviously incredible talent, a raw talent. There's a lot more for him to come, and I think Arne Slot will really relish working with him. I think last season, although he was outstanding in some games, he did miss a lot of chances, and that's what you'd expect from a young player. He's basically at the level, you could argue, that Alexander Isak was when he joined Newcastle from Real Sociedad. So there's work to do there. But Arne Slot will be absolutely convinced. And then, let's not forget, what an incredible achievement he managed at Liverpool last season with barely signing anybody. And now looking at the raw materials the club's board giving him now, I can see why every single Liverpool fan really, really excited. And I think those players combined with, Slot's brilliance as a manager will really move them forward, and they'll be really tough to beat Liverpool next season. That's why I think most of us would make them firm favourites.
A couple of the papers have Bryan Mbeumo on their back page, including the Star, David. Their headline actually focused on perhaps a little bit of disagreement, if you like, between the two sides over the actual deal for Mbeumo, which has been going on for some time. But do you feel like now Manchester United have got this player, he's going to make a big difference? Or do you still actually feel, look, they're lacking a key number 9 up front?
Yeah, well, after 6 weeks of negotiations, I'm sure it wasn't all plain sailing behind the scenes, and that's often the case in these situations. But Manchester United got there in the end. He was one of their absolute top targets, and understandably so. His record for Brentford last season in particular, goal scoring, assists, his influence, his character that we hear really good things about as well. But throughout his time, since joining them in 2019, and everything he's done there has indicated that he's ready and deserving of a chance at an even higher level. 25 years old, he'll be 26 when the new season starts. He's a Cameroon international, and he was being coveted by the likes of Newcastle, Tottenham, Arsenal as well. And so Manchester United were determined to strengthen in the sort of wide attacking positions. They brought Cunha in. They looked at a number of other players as well, and Mbeumo was very much among them. And they've managed to land both him and Cunha ahead of their pre-season tour, departing for the USA tomorrow. So I think they'll be absolutely delighted with that. And you never know how these things will work out. There's no guarantees. But from what I can see and know about Bryan Mbeumo, he looks a bit of a glove fit for Manchester United. And that's why their fans and the club are so thrilled. Even though it's a high fee, it could even be seen to be decent value further down the line.
Yeah, and he only turns 26 next month, so best years very much potentially ahead of him. Turning to the Sun, Charlie, your paper, yes, they have Bryan Mbeumo as their focus, but on the side of the back page, a really interesting story there. £80 million for Devils to nick him, focusing on Nicholas Jackson. Could Jackson be on his way to Old Trafford, Charlie?
Well, as you just said, it cost a few quid, that's for sure. Because I don't think Chelsea don't really need to sell, even though all they seem to be doing is signing players and mainly forward players. But it'd be a good signing for United. I mean, they've done great bits of business already in Mbeumo, finished product, which has not always been the case. Some of the recruitment, and Nicholas Jackson is again. There's more to come from him, but he's a good player. And I think he'll go on to be a really, really good player. Yeah, excuse me, a terrific signing for United. But I still think it might be a difficult one for them to get over the line.
What do you think about this, David? Does the actual fee of around 80 million, even 100 million being talked about for Nicholas Jackson suggest that wider challenge in the broader market to bring in a top-class striker with figures of maybe 150 million pound being quoted, say for Alexander Isak, for example? Does actually 80 to 100 million pound for Nicholas Jackson at the age of 24 feel all right to you?
Well, there's a paucity of those players. The demand far outstrips the supply of them, and that's why the prices are high. It makes a deal for somebody like Victor Gyökeres at what's being proposed as sort of 73.5 million euros, including add-ons, to look a bit of a bargain. Nicholas Jackson's clearly a very fine player. He's already adapted to the Premier League, and you don't know how these deals will end up. Some of the reports suggest there could be a conversation about Alejandro Garnacho going in the opposite direction. He's a player, of course, we know Chelsea have looked at. So I don't see Manchester United paying the sort of reported 80 million pound asking price. That would need to come down clearly for him to become a consideration. Manchester United. I mean, they are considering the likes of him and Ollie Watkins and Sesko and various others. Pretty much all of the top clubs would be, but we're not aware of any sort of concrete movements on that. No club-to-club talks at this point. And yeah, the finances for all of those types of players would need to become more realistic for Manchester United to move for them. That's not saying they won't move for them later in the window, because a striker is high on their agenda. I just think a lot of work will need to be done for Jackson or any of those others to be a really realistic prospect at this moment in time.
Charlie, we've got 30 seconds or so to talk about Marcus Rashford and focus on an article on the Sky Sports News website. Obviously, he's on his way to Barcelona for this loan move. Could this be a good move for Barcelona and Rashford?
I really hope so. Yeah, it's a tremendous opportunity for Rashford, and in many respects, he's lucky to get it. But if it doesn't work out, he cannot say he's not had a chance, because it's a brilliant opportunity. He did well at Aston Villa, not absolutely brilliant, but let's hope he can really push on and get back in the England team.
Charlie, David, been great to have you on the programme. Thanks very much indeed for being with us on Back Pages tonight. And if you missed any of the show, there's another chance to watch at hour. The show is also available as a podcast. Just download Back Pages on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts from. And join us again on Tuesday when our guests will be Henry Winter and Jack Rosser. That's 10:30 p.m. here on Sky.